In the early 1960s, Dr. Marcus wandered deeper into the mysteries of Paleozoic biology, more than any researcher before him. His work with ancient microbial fossils led him towards an anomaly buried within the samples, a living structure that should not have existed. As he traced its impossible resilience, the truth emerged behind him like something stirring beneath ancient stone. He had found what he would name the Progenitor Virus. The discovery should have launched his career into legend. Instead, a scandal erupted around him like a sudden storm. Accusations of falsified test results spread through academic halls, and a Swiss university that once championed him turned its back. With funding stripped away and a reputation in ruins, Marcus retreated into isolation, clinging only to the one constant that remained, the virus that pulsed with more promise than anything he had ever touched. From afar, Oswell E. Spencer watched Marcus's collapse and took a keen interest in the man. Through the Spencer Foundation, he offered Marcus refuge and resources, installing him within the labyrinth halls of his family's castle. There, hidden behind stone walls and iron gates, Marcus revived his research. Edward Ashford soon joined him, bringing both aristocratic influence and a deep fascination with the biological frontier Marcus had uncovered. Together, over long years of quiet experimentation, they recreated conditions from Earth's Archean age. Under those primordial skies, the virus awakened. It twisted, adapted, and birthed new forms, reshaping itself into something alive with terrifying potential. When the results were finally revealed, Spencer saw not a scientific milestone, but an opportunity that stretched far beyond the boundaries of academia. In that moment, the three men shifted from researchers to architects of a new empire. Their shared ambition crystallized into a single entity, forged from secrecy, science, and a promise of evolution. Thus, from the shadows of Spencer's ancestral estate, the Umbrella Corporation was born. Albert Wesker would always remember the first time he visited the Arklay site. The helicopter blades carved violent spirals through the mountain air as he stepped out onto the landing pad. Beside him, William Birkin, 2 years his junior and already consumed by his own ambitions, paid no attention to the unsettling atmosphere. His eyes were glued to the documents he carried, as if nothing around him could match the importance of the data within those pages. Both men had been reassigned to the mansion. The executive training center they had belonged to had closed abruptly, and their transfer felt far too orchestrated to be dismissed as coincidence. The only one who truly understood the reason behind it was Oswell E. Spencer. Spencer, one of the principal architects of America's T-virus research, had molded the Arklay Research Facility into his private kingdom. Wesker and Birkin were merely the newest pieces he had arranged on the board. The head of the facility stood waiting by the elevator. His name was already forgotten, a man whose authority existed only in hollow titles and outdated courtesies. The moment Wesker and Birkin stepped into Arklay, the facility belonged to them. Spencer had intended it that way from the start. He had selected them, groomed them. Ignoring the facility head, they stepped into the elevator. Wesker had memorized the building's layout the day before, committing every hallway and sublevel to memory. Birkin, meanwhile, remained absorbed in his documents, moving through the world as though other people barely existed. Most found their personalities abrasive within moments of meeting them, but the facility head had shown no irritation at all, a fact Wesker had not appreciated at the time. The man had simply understood far more than they did. He had known Spencer's intentions, and he had known his place in that grand structure. Throughout the elevator ride, Birkin studied a report detailing the emergence of a new virus in Africa, Ebola. Across the world, many scientists pursue studies on this pathogen, driven by two opposing motivations: the desire to save lives and the desire to end them. Ebola killed with ruthless efficiency, 90% fatality, organs liquefied within days, no known cure, no preventive measure, a virus capable of erasing populations if misused. International law nominally forbade biological weapons research, Yet its loopholes were large enough for Umbrella to glide through without resistance. If another nation might weaponize a virus, then defensive research became necessary, a convenient justification for the work Arklay truly intended. Ebola itself, however, held limitations. It died quickly outside a host. Ultraviolet light crippled it. It killed its victims too swiftly to spread efficiently. The transmission required direct contact. For the type of organism Umbrella envisioned, something far more adaptive was required. Still, Birkin studied the virus closely, intrigued by the idea of recombining its genetic material into Umbrella's developing starter viruses. When they reached the upper levels of the complex, even Birkin finally lifted his head. It was the first time neither of them saw her. She had been kept secret, even from high-ranking trainees, her existence buried beneath layers of secrecy. According to internal records, she had been brought to Arklay the day construction finished. She was 25 years old. No name, no background, no explanation for who she was. She was the host of the earliest T-virus experiments. The first trials had begun on November 10th, 1967. 11 years later, she remained alive, though Wesker questioned whether alive was the correct term for her state. Birkin muttered something under his breath, perhaps awe or disgust. Wesker never asked. The moment they laid eyes on her, the path before them became irrevocable. Success or decay. Those are the only two outcomes. Spencer had engineered it so that retreat was impossible. She lay bound to a pipe-frame bed, her body bearing the marks of decades of torment. Looking at her, Wesker felt the sharp, cold edge of realization. This too had been planned. Her suffering, her role in the future. Spencer had accounted for everything long before they arrived. July 27th, 1981. This was the day a 10-year-old girl arrived at the Arklay Research Facility, dispatched from Umbrella's Antarctic branch. Not as a student, but as chief researcher. Her name was Alexia Ashford. Wesker was 21 then. Birkin was 19. Yet the moment the girl stepped into the facility, rumors spread through every hallway and lab, consuming the entire complex. No one spoke of anything except Antarctica's prodigy. Her reputation preceded her. She carried on the weight of the Ashford lineage, legendary to Umbrella's older generation, irritably revered by those who had never accomplished anything themselves. Among the senior staff, the name Edward Ashford had been uttered like a sigh from a dying era. He had been one of the original discoverers of the starter virus, one of the minds responsible for envisioning the T-virus project. His death 13 years earlier left a vacuum that many still romanticized. Wesker viewed such nostalgia as a weakness. If Edward's lineage meant anything, the Antarctic facility should have produced results. It had not. Yet from the moment Alexia stepped foot in Arklay, the lesser researchers fell over themselves to praise her presence. They spoke of her inherited brilliance, of her bloodline, as though bloodline alone were enough to advance science. Wesker kept his disdain hidden, revealing irritation would only slow progress on the T-virus project. Calm decisiveness was essential. Those who wished to rise above others needed to be able to use human resources rationally and without hesitation. Even the past itself could be of use. Old researchers nearing death often made suitable test subjects. But Birkin was a problem. Though he never openly complained, Wesker could see how deeply the rumors about Alexia damaged him. Being Umbrella's youngest chief researcher had been Birkin's unspoken badge of pride, and now a child, 10 years old, and of noble lineage, had stolen that title. Birkin felt humiliated, overshadowed. His inability to accept it only proved his immaturity. Yet Wesker needed him stable. Their work depended on it. These 3 years marked their advancement into the second phase of the T-virus program, a point at which the concept of living biological weapon first solidified. But perfection remained elusive. The T-virus could not achieve a full infection rate. Human compatibility varied, and roughly 10% of the subjects showed no infection at all. Wesker considered 90% lethality extremely effective for a biological weapon. Spencer, however, did not. Spencer wanted a virus that could extinguish everyone, easily. His ambition exceeded any financial or strategic logic. Birkin, meanwhile, pushed forward with his own vision. He wanted a biological weapon that would augment the nation's military capability, something beyond viral infection. He sought to create a creature, a weapon that could target even those immune to the virus, and those shielded by protective gear. But the project stalled. Birkin's obsession accelerated far beyond reason. He spent entire days and nights in the laboratory, without rest. He rushed into experiments without proper planning. Subjects died too quickly for Wesker to preserve or analyze their samples. Each failure was immediately replaced. The head facilitator brought in new subjects, as though replenishing disposable tools. The facility descended into a kind of living hell, and through that hell, one subject alone persisted. She was 28 now, having spent 14 years inside Arklay's walls. 14 years with her consciousness erased by the starter virus. If her heart retained even a trace of human feeling, it could have longed for death, yet her body continued to survive, endlessly. Wesker could not ignore the anomaly. Her basic data matched that of countless subjects who had perished. There was nothing to justify her endurance, or explain why she alone remained alive in a place designed to unmake human existence. And in Wesker's mind, it was only a matter of time before its answer revealed something far more significant. The winter of Albert Wesker's 6th year at the Arklay Research Center settled over the mountains like a suffocating shroud. For 2 long years, the facility had produced nothing of note. Research drifted into a stagnant lull, and time felt heavy, repetitive. Then, on the last morning of the year, a report arrived that changed everything. Alexia Ashford was dead. The child prodigy of Antarctica, Umbrella's youngest chief researcher, had succumbed to the virus she had been studying, the T-Veronica virus. Her own creation had infected her by accident during an experiment. At 12 years old, she had been far too young to be handling such volatile material. At least, that was the official explanation. Rumors spread instantly throughout the company. Some claimed she injected the virus into herself deliberately. Wesker dismissed the notion outright. Even prodigies could make fatal mistakes, especially after trauma. Alexia's father had disappeared a year prior, leaving behind a legacy she was too young to bear. A miscalculation seems far more plausible. Her twin brother took over the research in Antarctica, but no one expected anything from him. Whatever glory the Astral lineage once held had faded into myth. Their family, like its reputation, was effectively dead, having contributed nothing substantial to the T-Rise program. To Wesker, this only confirmed what he had always believed. Legends rarely survive close scrutiny. News of Alexia's death had a visible effect on William Birkin. The insecurity brought on by Alexia's earlier presence dissolved. With no rival younger or more celebrated than himself, Birkin regained his usual arrogance and confidence. His subordinates, who had once whispered about Antarctica's child genius, were forced back into awe of him. Yet Alexia's memory became taboo. Mentioning her name in Birkin's presence sparked instant fury. Wesker attempted to obtain a sample of the T-Veronica virus for analysis, but Birkin opposed the idea so fiercely that Wesker had little choice but to let the matter rest. Despite the favorable shift in professional hierarchy, Birkin failed to mature. Progress stalled, and Wesker found himself turning his attention to far broader concerns. Arklay was surrounded entirely by dense mountain forests. He often hiked through them alone. The region was isolated, intentionally so. Helicopters were the only means of entry or exit. The facility's remoteness existed to contain viral outbreaks should a leak occur, but biological weapons were more complicated than that. Viruses did not discriminate by species. Influenza alone affected birds, pigs, horses, seals, and even humans. Yet even within a species, susceptibility varied. Ducks and chickens succumbed while other birds remained unaffected. Mutation changed everything. Hosts, vectors, range. During his forest walks, Wesker realized a terrible truth. Arklay's location amplified the danger. The woods teemed with diverse species, ideal carriers. Insects, small but numerous, could propagate infection far beyond containment. Plants could disperse viral agents through pollen. Under the right circumstances, the forest could become a massive transmission network. Antarctica had been a safer choice, a controlled environment, barren and distant. Arklay, by contrast, looked almost intentionally positioned to guarantee maximum spread in the event of an outbreak. But such a conclusion seemed unthinkable. What was Spencer attempted to accomplish? Wesker could not voice his concerns. The matter was too dangerous to share with unproven researchers. For a time, Birkin was the only person he considered confiding in. But Birkin's emotional instability rendered such trust pointless. Wesker needed answers. He needed access to information far beyond the reach of a chief researcher. And to gain that access, he would have to climb higher within Umbrella. His role in Arklay was no longer sufficient. Still, he could not act rashly. If Spencer even suspected disloyalty, everything would unravel. The 11th summer of Albert Wesker's tenure at the Arklay Research Center began quietly. He was 28 now. William Birkin had become a father. His daughter was 2 years old. His mother, one of the Arklay researchers. To outsiders, raising a family in the shadow of biological horrors would have seemed impossible. But only the unordinary survived Arklay. Only the truly unstable ever thrived there. After a decade of failures, setbacks, and dead ends, the research finally breached the threshold of the 3rd stage. Umbrella's goal shifted from creating infectious anomalies to forging a soldier, an obedient, intelligent, and monstrously powerful one. This was the genesis of the Tyrant Project. Yet a fundamental obstacle stood in their way. The Tyrant required a suitable host body, and such bodies were exceedingly rare. Though the T-Virus could transform almost any human into a zombie or hunter, the mutation sabotaged higher brain function. Only subjects with extremely specific genetic attributes or retain the intelligence needed for Tyrant operation. Birkin sought to circumvent this by selecting new mutagens meant to preserve neurological integrity, provided the subject already met the Tyrant genetic profile. But the simulations were damning. Only one human in a million possessed the necessary genetic structure. All others would collapse into standard, infected forms. Had they continued expanding the mutation library, they would have eventually engineered a variant of the T-Virus that was capable of producing tyrants from a wider demographic. But such research required ideal subjects, and finding even one candidate within the United States was nearly impossible. In the end, Umbrella resorted to abducting close contenders from other laboratories. Progress stalled before the new phase had even begun. It was around this time that Wesker heard whispers of a European program, another lab that had already reached the 3rd stage. The project was called the Nemesis Plan. Eager to break Arklay's stagnation, Wesker resolved to obtain one of their samples. Birkin opposed him initially, wounded by any implication that Umbrella's breakthroughs might come from outside his own work. But even the staff recognized that without a Tyrant-capable subject, the research was hopelessly gridlocked. Ultimately, Birkin relented. Several days and countless cryptic exchanges later, a midnight helicopter delivered a sealed container to Arklay's landing pad. Stamped across it were 2 words: Nemesis prototype. Wesker had been forced to use aggressive tactics to pry the sample out of France, but Spencer's support made it all possible. Spencer pulled strings buried so deep within Umbrella's infrastructure, and most employees never realized those strings existed at all. Birkin showed no enthusiasm for the specimen, but even he acknowledged its significance. The Nemesis prototype was unlike anything Arklay had encountered, a genetically engineered parasite, artificial life, designed to fuse with and override the host brain, granting immense destructive capability, coupled with functional intelligence. A perfect means of bypassing the Tyrant Project's greatest limitations. But the parasite was incredibly unstable. The attached documentation contained little more than repeated notions of failure. Every host died within 5 minutes, a brain takeover. Still, Wesker saw promise. They could extend the host survivability. They could seize control of the entire Nemesis project for themselves. To test it, they would start with her, the surviving female subject. After 21 years, she remained Arklay's enduring anomaly. With her extraordinary resilience, she seemed the perfect candidate for sustaining the parasite. And if she failed, nothing of value would be lost. Yet the experiment did not fail. The parasite vanished the moment it attempted integration. At first, Wesker could not comprehend what had occurred. It seems impossible that she of all test subjects, could assimilate the parasite's genes without immediate death. But the data was irrefutable. Her undying body had changed in a way no previous examination had detected. They had to start over, re-examining her from the beginning, disregarding a decade of old data, Something within her had evolved. Something far beyond the T-virus's original parameters. Only Birkin fully grasped the implications at first. There was a deviation in her biology, an anomaly born not from the T-virus design, but from a new, unknown interaction. The parasite had not killed her. It had not even survived her. Instead, it had ignited something transformative within her cells. Wesker recognized the moment immediately. This was the break they were waiting for. 17 years had passed since Albert Wesker last set foot at Arklay, yet the place greeted him with the same biting wind and unchanged mountain scenery. Even the buildings scattered across the ground appeared frozen in time, untouched by age or progress. As the helicopter descended, he saw William Birkin already waiting on the landing pad. The reunion carried a strangely nostalgic weight, as though meeting an echo of an earlier life. 4 years had passed since Wesker left Arklay. When Birkin's proposed G-Virus project earned approval, Wesker submitted a transfer request to Umbrella's Data and Information Division. A transition that, to most observers, seemed like a natural career shift. In truth, Wesker had long recognized that the G-Virus had surpassed his own capabilities. And though he still sought the truth behind Spencer's ambitions, that truth lay far outside the reach of a researcher. Birkin, as always, stood absorbed in a stack of documents, the wind whipping around his lab coat. Though he visited Arklay regularly, he was no longer assigned to the facility. His home now was the sprawling underground laboratory beneath Raccoon City, Umbrella's primary site for G-Virus development. Wesker had once doubted Spencer would approve such project. The G-Virus possessed too many unknown variables, diverging from the concept of a controlled weapon. Unlike the T-Virus, which required external stimuli, radiation or specialized environments, G-Virus forced spontaneous, unending transformation within the host. No one could predict what form an infected being would take. No method of containment or response could keep pace with its evolution. 7 years earlier, Birkin had seen the first signs of this phenomenon in a surviving female test subject. 21 years, she had coexisted with the viruses used in experimentation. Even the Nemesis parasitic strain had been absorbed into her body as just another mutation. The G-Virus plan simply aimed to push such capabilities to their absolute limit. What lay beyond the limit remained uncertain. Evolution, extinction, a finer perfected form, or a death spiral. Could such a thing even be called a weapon? What had Spencer envisioned when he approved such reckless potential? 4 years of work in Umbrella's information sector had taught Wesker much. Yet Spencer's true intentions still eluded him. And Spencer himself stopped visiting Arklay altogether, as if something he had long awaited was finally beginning elsewhere. Every year, he seemed to drift further away, an unreachable specter, receding across the desert horizon. Still, Wesker believed his moment of insight would come, provided he lived long enough to see it. He and Birkin entered the elevator and ascended to the top floor. Waiting there was John, Birkin's successor, and the facility's new chief researcher. He came from Chicago, a talented scientist, but far too morally rigid for a place built on ruthless experimentation. Rumors had circulated for months. If sensitive information ever leaked out from Umbrella, John would be the likely source. Wesker and Birkin walked past him, without a word. They had come to oversee her final disposal. After decades of infection, starter virus, T-virus, Nemesis parasite, she had begun to think again. Not consciously, perhaps, but with the grotesque imitation. Her behavior grew increasingly violent, and she had begun wearing the severed faces of another woman as though it were a mask. Reports indicated she had acted in a similar manner upon receiving her first viral injection years ago. She had killed 3 researchers. That alone sealed her fate. With the G-Virus progressing successfully, she was deemed useless. The order came from above. She was to be eliminated. For 3 days, the staff checked and rechecked her vitals to ensure she was truly dead. Her body was then removed under the facility head's instructions, taken somewhere where no one could determine. Wesker never truly discovered who she was, nor why she was brought to Arklay in the first place. She had been merely a test subject, yet without her, no G-Virus plan would have existed. And without that last decade of their work, both Wesker and Birkin's lives would have unfolded entirely differently. As Wesker left the facility, He considered the thought that lingered in his mind. How much of this had been orchestrated by Spencer from the very beginning, and how much still lay ahead, quietly unfolding according to a plan no one else could see.